Hello, and welcome to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I'm your host, Miracle Jones. I hope you all had a great weekend. We know there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of stuff going on. First, we just want to talk about the groundbreaking weekend we had here in Pittsburgh. We had over 50,000 people show up to our Pittsburgh Pride. And we want to say just thank you to all the organizers. Shout out the Pittsburgh Pride Group, Trans Uniting, everyone who had a hand in making this a wonderful and historic event for the city of Pittsburgh. As a reminder, a lot of stuff is happening in Pittsburgh right now. Outside is open, but with that, we're still in election season. We just had the finalization of the recount start today. Earlier today, the Board of Elections of Allegheny County met to go over the recount, to go over how the November 2022 election is going to be carried out. There's still a lot of questions and concerns about ballots, about mail-in voting, about drop boxes. People are still expressing a lot of fears and concerns about what's going on with our elections. And so as much as people want to take a moment to relax and pause away from elections, we're still just not quite there yet. However, we are one step closer to knowing who is going to be on the November ballot and who's going to represent the Republicans and Democrats. As a reminder, people always forget this part. The ballots are not yet finalized. The reason why? In Pennsylvania, we only have closed primaries. What that means is if you are not a Republican or Democrat, you cannot run for office. So people who are registered as independents or third-party candidates cannot start canvassing to be on the ballot until after the primary election. So for people who are independents, Working Families Party, Greens Party, Libertarians, any other parties, they're now going to be gathering signatures and collecting signatures to be on the ballot. Once they meet that ballot threshold, they'll submit those signatures. There'll be a challenge period to those signatures. Once the challenge is over, then we will know who is going to be on the November ballots. So it is going to be a long, winding process. Do not give up. You still have to be involved just to know what's going on. So we know there are going to be a couple of contested races for our congressional races, as well as some of our state house races. For instance, Zara, who we have interviewed on the Sunday Sit Down, is running as an independent. So you'll see her on the November ballot. In addition, right now is one of the most important parts of an election season, and that is budget season. The people you have elected to represent you are now in Harrisburg discussing and negotiating what's going to happen, not only with the Pennsylvania state budget, but here locally in Pittsburgh, what's going on with our city budget. And the mayor's office is holding a series of roundtable discussions to talk about what should be priorities and what funding should go to. We've been talking a lot about public health and public safety and the Office of Development and Inclusion, Diversity and Inclusion, and making sure those entities are funded. And one way that you can do that is to join these sessions. The next one is going to be on Wednesday. And if you go online to pittsburghpa.gov/OMB/CIP, you can actually submit comment, join some of the Zoom meetings, because, for instance, there really isn't a budget for transportation for people who, if you're using the bus, the Port Authority, there is a real pressing need to adopt funding for public transportation. That's going to be a huge area of negotiation, not only locally, but statewide. So you want to make sure you're contacting your elected officials so they know what's happening, and they know what areas of concern and priorities are for you, who are the constituents. In addition, like I mentioned earlier, in Pennsylvania is budget season. So next week, there's going to be a series of rallies in Harrisburg at the Capitol that people are pushing forth to make sure that things such as public education, transportation, housing, and infrastructure are well supported. So please make sure you're following and being on the lookout at the One Head Power social media, because we're going to be talking about a lot of these things for budgets. Budgets are made a year in advance here in Pennsylvania. So right now, what we're negotiating on is going to be how funding is going to be spent for next year. Because the stuff is not adequately and appropriately earmarked, then you can't have funding for it. For example, we're also going to be negotiating this summer the policing contract, because that renews every couple of years. And so it's very important and imperative that you are engaged in these electoral processes, because a budget is a moral document and it goes to dictate where money is being spent. Do you have broken streetlights, cracked sidewalks? We know a lot of us like to complain about the potholes. Well, that all goes to the budget. Winter is hard here in Pittsburgh. We talk about funding for salt trucks. That is all part of the budget. So you want to make sure you're getting your voice heard. You're attending some of these meetings. And if you can't attend online, you can always submit comment that goes to an official record as well. So you are not going to be left out of any of these processes. In addition, we know election that's coming up. And even right now in Harrisburg, they are debating about how our elections are going to operate. And so we want to make sure that we're updating you about some of the legislation that's coming forward. And it's going to be, we know, a very contentious season. As prior guests talked about, this is going to be a $1 billion race here in Pennsylvania. We are electing our governors, our senators, our Congress people, and so there are a lot of things that are at stake right now. And nothing is more important, as important as the right to vote, because that is our way of electing people who are making these decisions. And if you have time, make sure you're catching up, make sure you're catching some of the live streams of these debates in Harrisburg, especially when it comes to the right to vote. There is a lot of stuff going to be happening. People are negotiating about whether or not we should get rid of drop boxes, whether we should have additional voting limitations, whether poll watchers should be able to go from county to county and look at polls. A lot of people are fearing voter suppression and voter intimidation. So it's very important to stay alert and stay mindful about what's happening here in Pennsylvania. So as always, make sure you're liking and subscribing to our One Head Power YouTube pages, because we put a lot of information out there. And what's also been really, really cool is that there is some legislation. If you watch the Nate Sit Down that we did with Senator Art Haywood just on yesterday, he talked about some of the bills that he's putting forth, such as the independent investigations bill, some bills he's co-sponsoring, such as the funding to help landlords and homeowners update the housing and infrastructure. So there is a lot of really cool things happening at the legislature that impacts people's daily lives. And so it's going to be very important that you stay in tuned. And who better to talk to us about staying in tuned and up to date about the political process than our political director, Kahari Mosley, who is joining us now. So welcome to the One Head Power Hour, Kahari.
I was on mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, thanks for the wonderful introduction and always allowing me to jump in midstream. Yeah, as we all been following, and the what appears to be the most watched U.S. Senate race in the country. We have Dr. Oz, who is now, the official Republican nominee, and so we can expect the most expensive Senate race probably in the country, and definitely the most expensive Senate race in the history of Pennsylvania this fall with Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz. And I'm sure it's going to bring the entire political media universe here to the state of Pennsylvania for the next several months. And there's going to be millions and millions and millions of dollars spent to decide who will be the next senator from the state of Pennsylvania. And that shouldn't, diminish the governor's race as well. I think this is the first time, I believe, since the 1950s that we'll elect a new governor and a new senator in the same year. In past cycles, it's always been an incumbent senator or an incumbent governor running, but this is the first time we have an open seat for governor and an open seat for senator in the same cycle. So this is a truly historic year here in the state of Pennsylvania, and definitely everyone all around the country will be watching, particularly how that Senate race between Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and a celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz. It really makes for quite the matchup, and particularly given the fact that it could possibly decide, who controls the Senate come January 2023.
That is facts. And again, we still want to send, healing wishes to John Fetterman, who, is still dealing with having, some medical procedures. But, also with that, there were some rumors that the Democratic Party was planning to replace him. And I know former candidate Malcolm Kenyatta came out very strongly condemning those rumors, saying he is not a part of a plan to, unseat John Fetterman, that everyone is surrounding and coalescing around the lieutenant governor, and supporting him in this race, because again, it's going to be a very competitive race. On top of that, I mentioned earlier, the gubernatorial candidate Mastriano is right now one of the people who is introducing a lot of legislation to alter the way people are going to be able to vote in November, and so it's going to be a very competitive, unfortunately, a very stressful election season. But again, make sure you're registered to vote. You have the ability to vote here in Pennsylvania if you're 18 at the time, if you're going to be 18 at the time of the election. If you are a resident of Pennsylvania, been here for 30 days, you are a citizen, in the U.S. In addition, you can vote in Pennsylvania if you have a criminal record. You just cannot be serving a sentence of incarceration, cannot be in a halfway house attached to a sentence of incarceration, nor can you be convicted of a felony of the Pennsylvania election law in the past 4 years. So please make sure you are registered to vote. Even if you are someone who really is not very happily motivated about the electoral process, your vote does matter. And it's evidenced by a lot of this legislation that's coming down, how important it is to, have someone in these positions of power that represent your interests. Maybe not the best, but the most. And so, so that's what's happening right now. In addition, we're looking federally. There's a lot of conversations happening around policing, around investment, around public safety, and that's part of some of the conversation that we are going to have this evening with our guest. Both of our guests work around youth community support and care. Our first guest, Bre, is an artist and organizer for Care Not Control, and who has really been hitting this ground, talking about why we need to make sure we reduce the control the state has over youth. And so we want to welcome to the program Bre from Care Not Control.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're welcome. I know you've been really busy out on concerts. You do a presser. You've been like really busy out in Philly. But can you just talk a little bit about Care Not Control and the background behind the orgs?
Yes. My name is Bre Stoves. I'm a youth organizer for Care Not Control. I also work as a youth advocate for the Juvenile Law Center in Philadelphia. I got involved with Care Not Control campaign around the start of it in 2020. We are a coalition of young people and youth advocates for from several different organizations, including the Village of Arts and Humanities, Juvenile Law Center, Youth and Arts and Self-Empowerment Project, and Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project, short YSRP. Together, we created a vision for and action steps towards ending youth incarceration in Pennsylvania. We've launched our campaign in the fall of 2020 after Governor Wolf created the Pennsylvania Juvenile Justice Task Force, which studied the Commonwealth juvenile justice system for 16 months to create recommendations for reform. This was all prompted by major scandals involving the abuse of children inside of Pennsylvania juvenile facilities, including Glen Mills and Devereaux. The task force released its policy recommendations in June 2021. Care Not Control believes proposals require bolder and more comprehensive action to fix our broken juvenile justice system. We have met with lawmakers and advocated for legislations that will do so. While lawmakers have announced several proposals for reform, it has taken months to even get to that point. Our campaign is calling on lawmakers to take immediate action to pass this legislation. My role is to be a part of decision making, the process throughout the campaign. I serve for several committees involving the youth steering, policy committees, communications committees. I also publicly advocate for our campaign. I speak to lawmakers. I speak out in press conferences and interviews, op-eds, just, a lot of things, and, advocating for young people.
Thank you. And part of your advocacy, y'all just had a presser last week demanding some changes. Can you talk about some of the changes that Care Not Control has?
Some of the changes, one, we have a list of demands. We Care Not Control made our demands based off the recommendations from the Juvenile Task Force. One of the demands the first one is end the carceral state for youth in Pennsylvania. Number 2, divest from youth incarceration and reinvest in communities. Number 3, always treat children as children. Number 4, provide holistic support to young people as they await release. Number 5, transform probation and eliminate fines and fees. Number 6, provide holistic support to young people returning home. And number 7, release youth in light of heightened dangers of COVID-19. My favorite 3, honestly, and that really stick out to me is number 2, divest from youth incarceration and reinvest in communities. Because to me, that means stop putting young people in placement and put money into providing actual support and rehabilitation for these young people. Number 3, always treat children as children. I feel like no young person should ever be in or have to experience a prison-like setting. And number 6, provide holistic support to young people returning home. I feel like let young people be made more aware of and in reach of the resources that are available to them. Allow them to have that support.
Thank you for that. And can you tell us about like some of the specific campaigns that you're working on right now and ways that folks can potentially get involved with the work that you're doing in Philadelphia?
Yes, actually. Right now we actually have an album that we're working on. I'm one of the artists on the album. I performed my music, my song a few times, and it got the attention that I wanted, and that, I wanted it You know, it did exactly what I wanted to do. It resonated with young people. It resonated with, you know, older people, just all ages. People were able to understand and, you know, see where I'm coming from, and maybe not understand how I felt in that moment, but understand what I went through and how I got through it. And honestly, it's so many different ways to just, you know, support our campaign, you know, being there when, you know, we go out to these press conferences, or, you know, when we have these interviews, or, you know, just anything when different campaigns, and you're able to contact us and, you know, look more into us. We have a website, carenotcontrol.com. You know, if you want to send us a direct message or email us at carenotcontrol@gmail.com. And just look at the different things on our website, look at the different ways you can get involved, different ways you can support our campaign, and just, you know, our goal, which is the end youth incarceration in Pennsylvania.
And you mentioned a little bit about the album and Reformer. Can you just talk about this process? 'Cause I think it's a really big deal. And y'all had your concert, and I think it just shows some of the great creative work that you're doing. So you can just talk a little bit like about this and how you're using art to push your message.
It's so creative and so fun. Like, you get to the other artists and young people that you're making music with, you're growing a closer bond to them, because you're able to understand, you know, and get a little more intel on what they've been through. Like, you know, we've both been incarcerated, but we have two different stories. Or we may have been through similar things, but, you know, handled it differently, and or processed it differently. And just music is a way, honestly, for young people. It catches their attention, catch a beat, you know, a good beat, a good song, you know, they'll listen to it on repeat, they'll hear it on the radio. It'll really get their attention, and it'll make them want to hear it more, and it'll make it resonate with them. And that's exactly what I want the music to do. That's exactly what our goal is to allow young people's voices to be heard, and allow other young people to know that they're not alone. Like, they're not the only ones going through this, and that, you know, there are people out here that you may not know and may not see, but we're out here fighting for you. Behind the scenes, you know, up front, we're fighting, like, you know, and we're here to support you. We have been through the same thing. We have been through things that's similar, and we understand.
I don't know, mentioned it briefly, but your org and the people that you are working with, you're all formerly incarcerated youth, juveniles, and you're really taking your story and sharing it. So, what has been some of the reception, right? You're talking to elected officials, you're talking to the decision makers, and you're telling them basically about the horrors of youth controlled by the state. How have they been responding to you?
Honestly, in my opinion, I don't feel as though they have been responding well. I feel like they're not really getting our message, and that's why our goal here is to push it harder, put more pressure on them, and, you know, get them to understand and come to, you know, an understanding with us, and even just with young people in general, that, you know, locking them away is not rehabilitating them. Locking them away is not bettering them. Locking them away is just, you know, putting them in a system where they're going through a repeated cycle, where they're reoffending over and over and over. They got fines and fees that they're not able to pay. So they're getting locked up because they're too young to, you know, provide that amount of cash. They're too young to, you know, do the thing that in reality they need support. They need help. They need resources. And that's what these are alternatives, and that's what they should be putting their money into, building resources, alternatives for young people, because community-based resources actually are proven to be more effective and cost less. So why pay more to lock a kid up and not rehabilitate them and have them reoffending than actually give them the resources, supports, the alternatives, and allow them to change.
And could you just talk a little bit, about, the challenges that young people, once they end up in the system, when they come back out, what are some of the unique challenges that they face that we want to avoid happening by, as you talk about, um, you know, as you endeavor toward the goal of, removing young people, from these kinds of facilities. Can you just talk about, from a human perspective, what are some of the unique challenges that these young people who have been in the system face once they get out?
Some challenges, and I can't speak for all because I don't know what everyone has been through, but from personal experience, I can say, some of the challenges that I have dealt with was adapting back into the community, trying to, because though we are near and it seemed like life is on pause for us, it's still going in the outside world. So, trying to adapt to what's going on around us, trying to adapt to what's new, people done changed, things have changed. And also just trying to get my life back together, trying to get on the right track so that I won't have to deal with being locked up again. Trying to figure out ways to better myself, but because I'm not made aware, like a lot of young people aren't, because I'm not made aware, I don't have and don't know about these resources. So I have to go looking for them. I had to go find them. And then once I do, at times, because they're not well funded, there's not much that they can do. But as much money as they put into incarcerating young people, if they put that much money into these resources and into these alternatives, it'll be easier to come back into the community because you'll have that support. It'll be easier to know what you want to do. Start to figure out your next move in life, how you want to get your life on track, how you want to not get incarcerated again, not have to go through that experience again.
I really appreciate you talking that and being like very vulnerable with us. I know that is, a lot to talk about again. But you're still working, you're still organizing. Can you talk a little bit about some upcoming events that you have? I know y'all are pushing this album, and can you even just talk a little bit, because I mentioned earlier about the concert that y'all had too, because that was like a really cool exercise for people to see what happens when you invest in youth.
The concert was amazing. Like, to see so many, and we have so many different programs, but to see so many different young people, just to see what they've been working on, to see what they've, the ideas that they have. Like, some of these things were creative. I was like, I gotta go scan some QR codes. Like, I gotta get more active in this, because it was just like, this is really what these young people are doing, and it's like, it makes me happy that they have this opportunity. Like, because a lot of people don't know about these resources, and they out here, people are losing their life every day. Children of all ages, they out here, in these streets. They out here, surviving instead of living. When you can live, there are other options, there are other resources, there are alternatives, there are programs that can keep you out the way, that can keep you distracted and keep you focused and interested in something that you like and bring the best out of you. Because I feel like them kids brung their best. They brung their best. Them young people were doing their thing. And it was good to see. It was like a happy moment. They was shy at first. Some were shy at first, but you see that after a while, seeing that the crowd were interested and engaged, it brung it out of them, and they were able to give it their all. And that's what I push for all young people. Give it your all. Push for your dreams. Push for the things that y'all want to do. Keep yourselves motivated.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna let Kari have the last question as we wrap with you, Bre.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. If you could share with us again, how to get in touch, with your organization, how to get involved, the social media links and things like that, and any current activities you have coming up in Philadelphia.
Yes, you could see any of our upcoming events or anything that we have planned on our Instagram account is Care Not Control. Altogether, our website carenotcontrol.com, that'll let you know things that are coming up, events that's going on throughout the holidays, throughout the summertime. We have a summer program. And if you are interested in anything, that we have going on, any upcoming events, you could directly contact us at carenotcontrol@gmail.com.
Perfect. Bre, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And make sure y'all go listen to Bre's song. Bre, tell them how to get your song.
Actually, our song, because the album hasn't dropped yet, the song is not out, but there are videos on our Instagram page. If I'm not mistaken, it was I performed in California at when we did a little convenience. So it's just different ways that you could see it through our Instagram account. And if I could actually put my email account if anyone would like direct contact with me, and I actually have my track, so I could share with anyone that would like to hear it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bre. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, we were talking to Bre from Care Not Control. That is a youth collective of survivors of youth incarceration who are coming together, but primarily based on Philadelphia. But they're working all across Pennsylvania to advocate for community support for youth. And our next guest is Dr. Jones from PGH, who literally said, you know what, we need to be out here empowering our youth, supporting our youth, and founded the Guest Collective. So we want to welcome to the program Dr. Jones, is going to talk to us not only about the work he does, but also the summit that he has coming up. So welcome to the Power Hour, Dr. Jones.
Well, thank you so much, my sister Miracle Jones, and to Kahari. It's really my pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to share some of the exciting things that we're doing, but I also need to start by thanking that young lady, Bre. She is a bright light, and she has a story, and her emotional sharing of it, I think, is impactful. And I wish her all the best and want her to be able to achieve a lot of the goals, because our organization, we have a grant with Allegheny County Juvenile Probation. We're the first program in the county to start a diversion program, and that was in 2000. So since 2000, we've been able to get young people who at the time were being put into incarceration with adults in county jails. And so Youth Enrichment Services was given a contract by Allegheny County to get kids who are arrested for a crime that was not that serious, but still it would cause them to be incarcerated. And those kids were put into our program where we would do home visits, school visits, curfew calls, get them mental health counseling, do after school work, summer camps. We hired them during the summer. And so we've been really happy with the success of our program, but we see evidence from young people like Bre who have been a part of the system and are struggling to continue to go back and help others while also at the same time helping themselves. And the operative word she stated was the economics of the incarceration versus prevention. We learned a long time ago at $45 a day to put them in our program, as opposed to sometimes over $200 a day to incarcerate them. So she's absolutely right. And I just wanted to start off by thanking her for that wonderful message. And I'm sure people who listened to it were touched.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. And you talked a little bit about the work and being, the first, out here really helping some of our most vulnerable youth. What caused you to do this work?
That's a great question. I grew up in rural southern West Virginia. And at the time, my family was pretty poor, coal miner family. And as you start off in life without a lot, one of the things that I was able to do along the way was to have people who invested in me. And that investment in me allowed me to be able to be successful in a lot of ways. Think about going from a kid who grew up in rural West Virginia, outhouse, lived on a farm, grew up in a pretty tough time right after segregation. And as I was able to go to school, go to college, begin to work in 4-H. I was a high school coach. I was able to be active in my church, and had an opportunity to get a degree. And it went on from undergrad to a master's to a PhD. And the first thing I did with my PhD was go into the public housing community and start Project Yes. That was over 30 years ago. And we were fortunate enough to win 2 Bush Points of Light awards. We have national awards from, the National Housing Authority. We have programs now in Wheeling and Charleston and other communities. But I brought the program to Pittsburgh in 1994. And since then, we've been able to see the difference that we've made in the lives of so many kids, not only through what we call peer mentoring, which is a center of our program, but the idea of how you can take the community itself and allow the youth to have a voice, have young people to be your extra resources. And old people like me, kids don't listen to, but you know what? They listen to each other. And if you can have those young people, we get them trained and certified as peer mentors, and they work with the younger kids, even the kids that we, to come into our program from the juvenile probation. We mentor those kids. Sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 years they're in our program. We just had a kid that just now got admitted into college who came into our program as a kid that was arrested for a crime. And those are the success stories that we absolutely love. And that's why we do what we do.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Jones. You talked a little bit more about some of the other examples, of success stories, like young people who've been, through your program, overcome their challenges and moved on to productive lives.
I'm so happy too, because that really is our story. I'm really a retired college professor. I spent 32 years at West Virginia University teaching sport management. And you had so many of the athletes and young kids who came through our program. But my heart was always in the community, always with the youth. And, we just had one of our kids, Keith, who is, we flew him out to California. He graduated from a city school, came into our program, and sometimes I laugh at how they start, but you also almost have to cry how they finish, because they finish with such style. He and Glenn, 2 of their kids that went to Allegheny College. Glenn is going to Teach for America in D.C., and Keith has a job at Stanford University as a research assistant. We have our board members are made up of kids who've been in our program before as kids, and they've come back. If you look at our board list, we have 4 or 5 board members. We have parents of the kids who've been in through our program. So we feel really good about our success stories and about how we've been able to impact on a lot of the students and their lives and the lives of their families. We believe very strongly that our goal is to make the family the own best resource. To make the family their own best resource, not to feel like we got to continue to give them stuff, but help them to be able to build their own wealth, to cut off those cycles of poverty and some of those cycles of incarceration, and allow these youth to chart their own path, to feel like they have the agency to be themselves and to reach whatever goals they have. And when we think about, kids that graduate from our program, 90% of them get, promised scholarships. We calculated we put over $900,000 back in the community directly from wages we pay kids during the summer over the last 2 decades. And so that's real money that these kids are able to buy school clothes, or we have kids that we get bank accounts for them. And think about it, we have kids who are now in their 30s. So you know what? The first bank account I had was when I worked for Yes during the summer. So those are kind of success stories that we feel really proud of. We feel very good about, and we continue to feel like we're building the resiliency, we're building the value as a community asset.
When you talk about building the value, can you talk a little bit when you're working with these youth, some of the challenges that they are sharing with you that they are facing, and some of the supports that they are needed? There's a lot of conversation, and legally we just can't always have youth on some of these programs because they're under the age of 18. So can you talk a little bit about some of the things that they are saying they're going through and some of the supports that they say they need?
Well, this is probably a story that's gotten more sad as we've looked around because, we had what we called a mentoring model, a peer mentoring model that we were very confident with it. But you know what? When COVID came along, COVID just kicked that model all to pieces because right now, we call our gender specific programs where we have men or the teen boys and the teen girls kind of work together separately, and they have discussions, dialogue. They share their tough challenges and struggles. And you know what? I went to one of those meetings a couple of weeks ago, and I was shocked. I was shocked to hear how many of those kids have therapists, how many of those kids talk about their own internal struggles, the challenges that they have. And a lot of that, I believe, has been exacerbated by COVID. But that is new. The other challenges that they have, in my mind, is this. Think about it. Do you understand that so many of these young inner city minority kids are the breadwinners? They're the breadwinners for their family. 2 jobs these kids have. How can you be a kid if you're out here working 2 jobs to provide just enough money for the family to stay afloat? Those ones who are not working 2 jobs, you know what they're doing? They're taking care of siblings. They can't do things they want to do because they're responsible for the welfare and healthcare of their younger kids. So the biggest problem that these kids have is they're not able to just be a kid. They're not able to just be a kid, ride a bike, go to the movies, hang out with friends, just go downtown and shop around. Think about how much of their childhood has been lost because of the gun violence, the poverty, the inequity in our systems. And those are things that we face every day. And as a society and as a city and as a community, we need to address those. And that's what YES tries to do. So you see that these factors that are now pressing, they're pressing because we know that kids are resilient. Kids are resilient, but they too have a point where they give up or the stressors overcome them. And so the idea of having these kids, work the jobs, help around the family, forcing them to restrict their movement, not be able to go outside and interact with their peers and their friends. All of these things cause, for example, the situation that happened in Northside where one of our students got shot, Matthew Steffi. If there was something positive and uplifting and engaging for these kids to do, you wouldn't have almost 500 kids crammed in one house for a party that was just the only thing happening. Those are the kinds of structural deficiencies that we see in the community that cause some of the violence. If you had other outlets, other opportunities, ways kids could access resources, I think you would see a lot more, less violence and a lot more kids being kids and enjoying themselves as they grow up and experience what we all did as a kid,
Thank you.
I thank you, for bringing up, that terrible, incident, over on the north side, which obviously hit, your organization, very close, to the heart, due to Matthew. And there's a great, article in the Washington Post that we're going to drop in the comments that, talks about not only the incident over on the north side, but, Matthew's journey. If you talk a little bit, about Matthew's journey before, the unfortunate shooting, which took his life, but, he went through an incredible journey, through some tough times and into your organization, ultimately becoming an employee and a mentor.
Yeah. And, those are kind of things that make an older guy like me get pretty emotional because you're talking about a kid who he came into a program. Think about it. In 2015, this is a kid whose father couldn't take care of him. His mother was ill. His grandmother took him in. and his grandmother died. When his grandmother died, the magistrate Judge Cooper had Matthew, who was not in legal trouble, but he was not going to school. He was not, active in the things he needed to do. His aunt Bonnie called me and she said, "Dr. Jones, you need to help me. My, nephew she listed all the things that was challenging in his life." And so we said, "Sure, we'll help him," and we brought him into our program, and he was able to, at that young age, get really strict mentoring and support. He went away for a while because sometimes as the emphasis goes away from his actual crisis, and he thought he was doing well. He would come back into the program maybe a year or two later and go to our summer program where we hired the kids to work. He worked for us. But just this past year, when he was working with Lee Davis and some of the other folks with his, work, he got connected to our program again. And we said, "Matthew, we're proud of you. We can't believe how much you've grown." We hired him to come and work in our office. And one of his jobs, as a matter of fact, was to help the younger kids understand what the real issues were facing kids and how they could avoid that. And he started a wall, like a wall of bereavement for any kid who's been killed in the city over the last year. He put their picture up and he put a saying up and something. So we had a whole side of our wall filled at. And we thought that was a message for him. That was his ministry, to help these kids understand how quick and easy things could happen to them. And, as sad as it was, we paid him on that Thursday because it was a short week. And he left the office, took out the trash, what he normally does. And when we heard that there were 2 kids killed, there's no idea in our mind he was one of them. When we found out, it was devastating. You can't put 6 or 7 years of our sweat and tears and prayers and hard work into a kid and have them just get to the point where they can really just see the future and bring in other kids off the street, and for him to lose his life, that was really a shot to all of us. And so we're still pretty upset about that.
Thank you for sharing that. I know you said you're emotional, and again, our condolences. But part of that, you're continuing the work that he started, and you're having this summit. Can you just talk a little bit about how the summit came together and how you're continuing on his work with trying to reach more kids?
That's a good point. Thank you so much. Well, the summit started, as a matter of fact, last year. When we started to see the uptick in the violence in the community, we said to ourselves, we need to really have a whole year where we focus on nonviolence, peace in the neighborhood. I talked to Mayor Gainey before he was the mayor. And I said, you know what? I'm really going to try to do this year of peace and nonviolence. I'm going to need your help. And we sat down with our staff. We had our teens, our kids, our stakeholders, our board. One of our board members, Don Seaton, who's an attorney. I know he's an attorney and a retired FBI agent. He said, "Hey, I'll help you." We had State Trooper Robert Hughes, who is an African-American, state trooper, said, "I'll help." And they were able to help us get together with some city police, with some mentoring programs, the mentoring program of Southwestern Pennsylvania. We had CMU, one of our good friends, Rachel Burson. And we said, okay, let's get a whole year of activities planned around this idea. And one of the highlights of that program was going to be the summit. Now, this summit, if you think about it for a minute, it is a teen-centered activity because we want to have the kids have a voice. Want the kids to be able to be a part of and like I said, we don't want to blame them for all the shooting because we know that they don't get guns, at the grocery store. Somebody brings those guns to them. But we believe very strongly that we wanted to have kids become accountable, have these kids become accountable to the problems of this recklessness they have with guns. And so we wanted to take the kids from our program and build a theme of public safety and teen violence prevention. We've got, folks from the Mon Valley that are going to be there. We have, the mayor's going to be speaking. We have Bonnie. We have Antoine Rose's mother is going to be on the program. We have, if you look at the program, we have a very strong group of professionals and experts. Dr. Elizabeth Miller from Children's Hospital, Dr. Evelyn Wheeler. When we look at the list, it is a very broad, very deep, and very strong body of experts that will be supported with kids. The highlight is going to be Dr. David, Special Agent David Daniels Wantabi, who is a NASA profiler, and he's going to come in, and we just met with him again today, and he's coming from California, as a matter of fact. He is really going to be the highlight of our program, and so we're excited about that. We're still looking for sponsors. We want to feed them when they're there, and we want to make sure that we can cover the cost of the rental of the facility. But it is July the 8th. It'll be an all-day program, and we have 8 sessions in the morning that kids can go through. 4 of them will have a lunch there. We have a panel presentation. We have a United States Attorney Cindy Chung, who's really very active in helping to address some of the violence in the communities, and how do she, as a United States attorney, see less of these kids and see less of the violence that they create. And so she signed on real early. And of course, the afternoon will be highlighted with Special Agent Wantabi.
Thank you so much for listening again. How do people get in contact with you about the summit? How do they register their youth? If they have youth in the area to come to the summit, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Okay, very good. What we're doing is we're actually sending out invitations to youth groups. We've invited, Gwen's Girls and Youth Places. We've invited Brothers and Sisters Emerging. We have a broad Dante Green, the coach at Westinghouse. He's bringing his players. So we're actually trying to be very selective in recruiting kids for the program. And we're doing this because we want to be in a position to get these kids as emerging leaders. We don't want to have kids just walk up that day and come into the summit. We're trying to have these youth groups refer them. Give us your best. Give us your kids that are interested and motivated to try to seek solutions. Why? Because we want to have this program have legs. The kids who come to it, we want them to be the county-wide, what we call teen council. A teen council where they would be active in their own community. They would be active across the community with issues that we know that we all face, and that we hope to be able to take them out of the county, we out of the state. We're looking to take them on a trip to the Civil Rights Museum in Alabama, to the Peace and Nonviolence Center there in Atlanta, to take them just to the DC, to the African American History Museum. Get these kids out. Our one goal, and I travel quite a bit to Africa, we want to take a group of these kids to Africa to see the world, to see the opportunities that they have, and the what we call the real self-actualization that they can actually have if they're able to get away from the vicious cycle of violence and the pressures that come from some of their issues that contribute to their poverty. Lower performing schools. Sometimes it's over policing. Sometimes it's lack of public safety in their communities. We want to have these kids, as the summit breeds a longer, reach, that we can have next year, where we'll have another summit where we can have these kids come back and report what they've done during the year. What difference have they made? How have they been able to take some of the ideas from the summit and use those to build strength and nucleus? A lot of times we think there's a silver bullet to solve the problem, but it's not. There's no silver bullet. It's just good old-fashioned hard work, dedication, commitment, a whole lot of passion, and what we believe are a lot of allies that come from our funders, that come from folks like you in the media that push our issues and give us a voice, and of course come from parents and school teachers and coaches who help these kids one at a time to build a life that, you know, they were meant to live if it weren't for some of the stressors of guns and other related violence that unfortunately they face on a higher level than others.
Thank you for that. I just had a quick question. I know we're getting close to the hour. You know, have you had a chance to look at Mayor Gainey's plan for peace? You know, I know there was a recent, you know, press event and a rollout. You know, have you had the chance to look at it, and what role do you see your organization playing, you know, in this broader infrastructure? You know, because I think so often in the past we've kind of looked at it as a law enforcement issue, you know, and you're bringing in youth, sports coaches, and all types of organizations, you know. So what role do you think your organization and the coalition that you're building will have, you know, in helping achieve this goal that Mayor Gainey has set?
You know, first of all, I want to say I love Mayor Gainey. I love him. You know, he's been a mentor for our organization as a state representative. He hasn't changed. His heart is with the community, his knowledge and his commitment to helping the community. So I'm very excited about him and his chief of staff, Jake Wheatley, who funded a lot of these initiatives in as a state representative. So what we're trying to do as an agency is to lead. You know what I mean? We want to lead. That's one of the things that I find about the city that kind of challenges me sometimes as a small little nonprofit. You know, we don't want to say we're going to follow, you know, this plan or follow that plan, because I'm telling you, when COVID came along, we threw every plan we had out the window. You know, we said, hey, whatever these kids need, let's do it. And so we feel very strongly that we're letting the kids, the teens lead us. We're letting the community, the parents. And when we're getting some real good support from a lot of the agencies and organizations and funding institutions. But the truth is, the mayor has a plan that's only going to be successful. It's only going to be successful if people can stop feeling so driven by their ego, stop trying to, you know, this is my turf. I'm the one who's doing this. This is, you know, I'm the only expert at this, which is always, you know, sometimes the challenges we have when we have people who don't want to share or feel like, okay, you know, you're not a part of this and whatever. So we got to come together, lead, be responsive, be able to get partners and allies like you all, and continue to realize that the issue is going to take all of us. It's going to take every one of us. Everything we have is we have to put into this problem, because these kids are our only best hope for the future. They're the best resource we have, and we have to do right by them to see that they get a chance to live a happy, fruitful, enjoyable life, and they can grow up and reach some of the old age that we like to think is due and is the goal of everybody.
And with that, we want to say thank you so much to Dr. Jones. Please reach out to him at the Youth Enrichment Services. We have his contact in the chat. And again, please reach out to him to support and to sponsor his youth summit that he really needs to have go effortlessly and smoothly to really help these kids. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Jones.
Well, thank you for having me today, and I appreciate what you all do. It's been my pleasure, and good luck to you all in the future. And I hope to be talking with you. As you know, we're having our presser on Friday at 10 o'clock. So we'll be focusing on that and giving you information to help us with that. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you much. All right. Appreciate it. All right. Bye now.
And I know Dr. Jones is talking about these kids, and also want to put on your radar this Friday, WAMA 100, which is the local radio station here in the city of Pittsburgh. They're doing a Stop the Music conversation this Friday at noon. They'll be talking to kids from 12 to 17 years old who have been impacted by gun violence, who are in the heart and the thick of it. And if you want to hear directly from youth this Friday, please make sure you tune into WAMA 100. This is a very necessary dialogue, because again, these are our babies who need our support, our love, you know, our care, and not our control. So this is an ongoing, all hands on deck. We do not condemn our babies. We love, support, and we invest in our children. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kahari, who's going to take us out for this evening.
Yeah, I want to thank our guests, Bre and Dr. Jones, for joining us this evening. And we just also dropped information about the Stop the Music, Stop the Violence event on WAMO 107.3 as well. Again, but thank our guest Bre Stoves and Dr. Jones for joining us tonight, talking about very important issue from a different point of view. Oftentimes, you hear adults talking about young people, but not often the adult advocates for young people, as well as the young people themselves, speaking and telling their own stories. So that's what tonight, was all about. Because we do know that over the last year or two since the pandemic, gun violence has increased, as a cause of death for young people in particular, around the country, and I believe it's now become the leading, cause of death. So this is definitely a very important, critical issue, very timely to be talking about this, and we definitely need to be supporting those organizations that are doing the work, as well as the young people that are facing, these tremendous challenges, in this day and time. So again, want to thank Bre and Dr. Jones for joining us this evening to talk about these, very, very, very important issues. And as we, continue through the summer, we will continue to bring, voices like Bre's, voices like Dr. Jones on, as we take a little bit of a pause from the political season. And as we get closer to the fall, we will get back, to more of our political programming. But we want to stay, issue-based, and particularly community issue-based, over the next several months as we ease from the spring into the summer months. And it was a very, very long winter and a short spring, but it definitely appears that summer is here, based on the weather. So we definitely want to, be able to get out of our homes and enjoy our weather, and not be afraid that we will become a victim to some, either random, act of violence, or just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we all have a shared interest, in peace, regardless of what, side of town that we live on. We've seen, just even in the past couple weeks, how, these tragedies can visit, any of us, being, unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time. So we all have a vested interest in bringing peace, to our communities, and really decreasing, these acts of gun violence that we see not only here, but around the country.
Yes, and again, we want to thank all of our guests for joining us. Like I said, at the top of the hour, please make sure you're registered to vote. Please reach out. Again, there's budget season. The Office of Violence and Prevention, they need some funding and support. So if you're someone who's really moved about what you heard today, advocate for that. If you don't know what to advocate for, want to talk on the city budget. And with that, we hope you all have a great evening. Tomorrow, Coach Blue, I think everyone knows will be on what Black Pittsburgh needs to know, talking about violence, talking about, Mayor Gainey's plan to address violence. So make sure you tune in. Hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much to all our guests. We'll see you next Monday. Have a great night.